Ladies and gentlemen, so here we go. MMA Power Talks. Grandmaster Jerry Fastly Fontaine is here with Sensei.
Rashid Kareem Ahmad.
This guy has a lot of names, so I'm not even sure which name I'm going to use. Okay.
Rashid is about to be legally changed in a few, but Rashid.
So Cool Keith. Anyway, but what I would like to talk about today is about somebody or with somebody that I remember since the early 1980s. Now, the only reason I say I remember from the early 1980s is because it's the truth. I have a pretty good memory. Now, I'm a young guy. I'm only 54. This gentleman's older than me, and I'm sure he has some references to when we first met. But what I always noticed about him was that he would, I don't know, it's kind of weird. Like he would pop up and then disappear, and then pop up and disappear. But when I would hear that he was in the military, so he was abroad in places I would love to have been to, Okinawa and Japan and throughout Europe, and and throughout the years, I would see him compete with what I would consider, for what it was worth, authentic, traditional Japanese / Okinawan karate do art, even his weapons. I remember that. And just to be honest, guys, the history of karate do is a matter of who you're talking to, because everyone has a selective memory or financial vested interest or whatever the case may be. But I'm coming from the left field, don't care about Japan or Okinawa. I love them as much as I cared. I love Jamaica and Bermuda and Newark and the Bronx. But I do see the common denominator of incredible stuff. Now, Okinawa Te is where martial arts that we know it when it comes to karate, came from, and they got influenced by the Chinese, and they know that as Kempo, and they got connected because of Zen Buddhism. So technically, martial arts, as known by a lot of those guys, is really more of a religious thing that also has the physical thing. And then us Americans wanted to learn that mystic, even though today would be derogatory, Oriental secrets. But just to be fair, I've never traveled to Japan or Okinawa. Have you, sir?
Oh, I have.
Oh, baby. So that makes it a little interesting compared to what would be so-called traditionalists and people who have authentic, hands-on knowledge. And I am not that person. But I have spoke to many who have been, and all I can do is continue and regurgitate what they said. But in this case, you're not Mr. Ed, but you're definitely the horse. You went to Okinawa, you went to Japan. When was the first time?
The first time I went to Japan was, I remember the exact day, matter of fact, was November 8th, 1977.
Oh,
I was on my way.
Whoa. I started martial arts April 19th, 1976. At this point, you're already in Okinawa. Holy smokes. Props to you. Okay.
Japan. I was on my way
to.
I was on my way to South Korea. I had received orders to the 2nd Infantry Division. I was in the Army initially, and we stopped in Japan, Yokota, Japan, along the way. And I remember being there. I'm thinking to myself, "Wow! Just a few months ago, I was just running the streets of Newark. Now I'm here in the places I only dreamed about.
New York or Newark, that's in Jersey.
Newark.
New Jersey, right?
There's a Newark in Delaware, Newark, Ohio, and Newark in California, but Newark, New Jersey is the one that counts.
I think the difference between those two is that they say Newark and you guys say Knock.
Well, I don't know about I particularly speak English, so whatever they're speaking, I don't know.
But you've heard of some of those other people,
yeah, I've
right?
heard of him. Newark, yeah.
But the state, I think, is New Jersey.
Yes, definitely.
Okay, okay.
And I said I stopped in Japan on my way to Korea. And I've been back to Japan a few times. I've been to Okinawa and everything, right? And the thing is, if you want to learn true or even authentic karate, you don't necessarily have to go to Japan. However, if you have an opportunity to train under a Japanese Okinawan teacher, then you should. And what I like to say is...
Hold on a second, because you just said two things there. And the only reason I'm interjecting is because I think people might have that question. And let me explain by that. I thought that was my Facebook. That's your Facebook. Okay. All right. So There's a difference between Japan and Okinawa, guys. Now we
Yes.
know that Japan and Okinawa, I should say, Okinawa is a territory of Japan. Same way Puerto Rico is a territory of the United States, but sometimes Puerto Rico is not really the United States, if you know what I'm talking about. Well, sometimes Okinawa is not really part of Japan either. And Japan is mainland Nippon, and Okinawa is a bunch of islands that are of not too far from it. So Japan karate and Okinawa karate is not the same karate.
No.
Similar in the sense that it came from China, but the Japanese won't give the credit to China, so that's why they changed the name to the way the open hand.
Yes. Now, the Japanese have a lot of power in their karate, in their practice, their whole process, very powerful. However, if you want sheer, raw, unadulterated power, you're talking about training with the Okinawans.
They have weights for their fingers. They still have these old.
These guys, they practice. It is a custom called Hojo Undo, I believe, which is basically is auxiliary training. They carry the big jugs with the fingers and stuff like this to strengthen their grips. They have the things they swing over here like this, right? I forgot the name of the device. They got so many
kind of like the Hindus do stuff like that too. Remember, guys, China borders India, and that's the biggest of what would be Asian countries in terms of volume. However, Nippon, so-called mainland Japan, also has conquered. They conquered Korea, they conquered China twice, and they also conquered, obviously, the Okinawans. But the Okinawans are still using some older school stuff to make even their fingers, their toes, their shins, their whole body into.
Yes, they have an exercise for their toes, strengthen their toes, their ankles, their feet. Yes. There are some practices in Okinawa that you would not find in Japan. You just won't. Because Japanese training methodology is almost totally different from the Okinawans. The Okinawans.
Wait, hold on a second again, because I know he's going off. See, what you consider normalcy, most people have no idea. Right now, people are going, whoosh. Guys, understand this. Karate Do is from Okinawa. Yes, there's a Japanese version, there's a Korean version, which only really means there's Budo or Wushu, which is war arts. And we've been warring since the beginning of time. So call it whatever you want, but this is referencing it to a specific region of the world. Now, the Japanese were rich as compared to the poor Okinawans. Am I wrong?
There's a lot of wealth on both sides, but the Japanese seem to have taken the bull by the horns and ran with it.
Well, they had metal, and metal as compared to. Remember, we go back in the in the historical times. The whole thing, I understood the samurai were part of what would be the shogun or the emperor, what have you, and they had metal, and that's how they were able to overcome a bunch of other areas. They were really good with the swords as a samurai. The Okinawans didn't have that, but they had other weapons that was really farming utensils or things, and they had to protect themselves. But I remember watching a documentary called Budo, and in Budo they said they wanted to make their body into an armor. And I think that's where, so when the guy throws a Mawashigeri, a roundhouse kick, and his toes have been developed, and he happens to have no shoes on, that thing could probably puncture somebody's eyeball, huh?
You know what? Their training methodology is unmatched. You can't, Okinawans, you can't beat them now. Japanese, if you notice, Japanese body.
Okay, I don't know who it is, but somebody's trying to stop this interview from happening because he's getting ready to drop some bombs here on the Japanese. I hope they're not the ones that put a block on this, because right now he happens to be frozen. I'm not sure if you lost him, but listen, this guy again.
If you're talking about old school karate and power,
all right, I need you to rewind. I need you to rewind. You froze for about 30 seconds. And I'm not sure if it was you or me, but you was frozen for about 30 seconds.
Must have been you, because it was still going.
Or the last thing that you said, and I was going over here, but I guess we both going. But anyway, you said the Okinawans, the quality and the strength or the brutality of the Okinawan training.
Their methodology is, as I said before, totally different from the Japanese. There are some similarities, But while the Japanese developed their power from positions, body positions this way, this length, the Okinawans developed their power from this length. So whereas if you look at even in the dojo in the daily practice or in competition, you'll see Okinawans, they'll punch from here. Japanese will punch from here, right?
Wait a second. I thought you was part of the Army. What with the Navy thing?
Huh?
Wait, you're confusing me now. I thought you was in the Army. I just saw a Navy shirt.
Oh yeah, because I was in the Navy too. I got Army 1 in the Navy.
Wait a second. This guy, we're gonna have to interview you 10 times just to find who the hell are you. We don't know your real name.
Yeah,
you're part of the Army, part of the Navy, Japanese,
my real name is
Okinawa.
Rashid Kareem Ahmad.
Yeah, until a few hours from now, where everything changes back to. Anyway, that'll be a whole other seminar. So the distance being closer for the Okinawans, the Japanese further.
Yes. So while Japanese techniques are more linear, at least lengthwise, right? There's power there too, but old school Okinawa power, you can't beat it. You cannot. You just can't. Their power is unmatched. Their philosophy, if you're talking about power, matter of fact, I would go so far as to say this. If you want to compare the principle of Goshin, which is self-defense in Okinawa, with the principle of Goshin in Japanese, you'll find out that the Okinawan version of Goshin is a lot more, is different. It's different.
All right, what again, guys, if you haven't noticed, this guy is very intellectual, and he's assuming that all of you know what Goshin means. And some of you thinking that's the Power Ranger, maybe. What does Goshin even mean?
Goshin is self-defense. That's the art of self-defense. Okay. So it's methodology. Now, not everything you see in karate is self-defense. For example, you see somebody going up and down the dojo floor, has absolutely nothing to do with self-defense. That's just a safe vehicle for practicing techniques without hurting yourself or your opponents. Goshin is somebody put their hands on you, bust them in the mouth, right? You're defending yourself. You do simple things. You don't have to be anything fancy. Why are you gonna try to kick to the head when you got all of this right here? No, it makes no sense. It's stupid. You'll never see.
The Okinawans are a little more practical.
Yes, very. But you know what? Practicality, what you can't do. You ever seen an Okinawa kicking anybody in the head? I'm not saying they don't want to, but you generally don't see that. Why? Because they want all of this right here, and you want to get something this small. It's ridiculous. And then you also got to remember that if you were Japanese practitioners, right, they are practitioners of Japan karate. They like to be fancy. They like to.
Okay, one more second. That's what I meant. When I look at Okinawa stylists, they look like a bunch of farmers. Their pants were rolled up high. They weren't what you would consider. They were country.
They're simple.
Simple. Now, a Japanese, what I would notice, their whole thing was like making themselves look good also. Now, I'm not anti that, guys. Please, let's keep it real, man. The fast food character probably was as flamboyant, if not more than most. So it's not that. But one of the things that you just mentioned also was that when I fight point karate, 9 out of 10 times I went to the body, because even people with big heads have a bigger body. So practicality went towards what would be the increasing the possibility of hitting center mass to stop the person. And yes, and then you can do a headshot, but maybe you bring the head down. Mm-hmm. That's probably when I would see an Okinawa kick to the head, because they probably maybe put the head down and need somebody and maybe kick them, but not for the sake of what a Taekwondo guy would do just to kick high. Or an Okinawa would probably sweep them.
See, another thing too, when you see Japanese styles do stuff like this, if it's effective, it works. But the danger in that is, first of all, the higher up that you execute a technique, I don't care if it's a punch, a strike, or a kick, you're losing power when you do that because you're fighting gravity. It's a scientific fact. If you bring your leg up here and kick, you're fighting somebody who's 6 feet taller than you, you still got to bring that leg down now that you got it up.
So look at what happens. For years, I've been known for this picture of me throwing my kick up there. And I told people that only took what would be the range and increased it. The lower I go in flexibility, the higher it goes in intensity or power, as long as I hit the target. So the hardest, most powerful kick you should ever throw is stomping somebody's toe. So that's pretty consistent with what you're talking about. Just because.
Yeah, you know what? Because then instead of fighting gravity, you go with gravity.
Yeah, you use the elements.
Like I saw a post the other day that someone that we both know. Matter of fact, we just talked about him a few minutes ago. He was
yeah, which name? We won't use it. There used to be other names before him, and now there's new names, and then he has a government name. Maybe you guys are related, man. You guys got a lot of names, man.
Well, this guy, he was executing a very a nice kick. So I made a post on his thread, and I said, "So what? I bet you I can kick in your ankles and step on your toe."
Let's think about it. My first style of martial arts was Kung Fu. And in Kung Fu, they do something that's very, very different from a lot of what would have been other styles. And they use the heel kicking towards the toe to make the fingernail go into someone's toe and break their toe. So when they hit with the heel, they're not just stomping the ground. What they're doing is making believe that they're using their heel to hit the toes and bring them back. Because you're absolutely right. How are you going to walk with no toes? How are you going to walk with no instep or swollen ankle, lower shin, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm 100% in concert with you. Even though I was known as a so-called kicker, I kick people to the body, and in the street situation, it will be a leg kick a lot faster, because that is what's going to take out the opponent, and it makes sense to me.
Yeah. It's a scientific fact that linear techniques are much more powerful than techniques to the head. So, well, this is a straight linear technique. This is a roundabout way of doing things. If it works, fine.
Right, positioning has a lot to do with it, footwork, and timing, opportunity.
See, what I like to do is kick in the balls. If you've been down, then I'll kick in the head.
Well, okay, now that's an example there. I'm referencing this to sport karate. In sport karate, I fought in regions that had groin kicks because I want to become diversified and aware of that possibility. And I would kick them to the groin and then the face in the combination, because you can do that. In a street situation, you would do that also. So, to me, martial arts has so much fantasy, which is all cool. I'm into the mysticism, and I like the stories too. But the practicality of things is that a finger to someone's eye will bust the eyeball, and the thumb will also. And I'm sure that might be based on what you're telling me is what the Okinawans might have been doing.
Yes, they train. You talk about eye, like you just mentioned the eye, right? You'll never see Japanese. You never see them train the thumb. Whereas Okinawans, I've seen them personally hit the makewara like this, with this right here, the thumb, like this right here. I've seen them do that with their toes. You never see Japanese practitioners train like that. No.
Okay, so now guys, listen, we're not here to badger any style. Okay, let's keep it real. They're all good and applicable in different things. So we're not here, again.
And I'm a practitioner of Japan karate, and I believe in it, and I'm still going to be practicing it, but I tell the truth.
According to the Okinawans, what they call Japanese karate, and you might have heard it over there. What do they call Japanese karate? Well, this is the reference that I heard. It might be wrong. Kitty karate.
I've never heard that before.
No, that's what they call. Well, this is what I've heard a few people say. And what they mean is that they had to make Funakoshi, when he came over, they had to change the way they were teaching, so it would be better for the Japanese to be able to learn it. Otherwise, they would not be training in those things that you just mentioned. Those guys are crazy. Why? They don't got no freaking anything better to do than make their entire body hard. When we have a sword, or we have a gun, or we have money, and we have a gang, we're Japan. But those Okinawans were a whole other level.
Yes, and matter of fact, if you look at all of the old videos or photos of Funakoshi Sensei, you see his stance. Of course, he was a short person, but you've never seen him do a full Zenkutsudachi. He was doing what is called a Hanzu Zenkutsudachi, which is half that distance, right? So that was the Okinawan method of training. It was, I believe, Masatoshi Nakayama Sensei who modified or suited the training methodology for the Japanese, right?
So they did a version of the original style. So,
Yes.
so instead of them being MCs, they became rappers, and they started mumbling at some point and still saying it was the same thing. Maybe that's not a good reference point, but I only say that, guys, because to me it's all good. It could be all music, it could be all martial arts, it could all be, but you come from North and you reference that to being the only one that counts. In other words, we appreciate and love our motherland, regardless. If you lived in New York, you would have said the same thing. And if it would have been in the Bronx or Brooklyn and Queens, you're supposed to love where you're from. Pride of ownership. The Okinawans have that pride, but it was stripped away from them because people consider already like it's all Japan. Oh, Okinawa is Japan also. But there is a big difference even in culture,
Yes.
isn't there?
Yeah, there's also, people don't realize this, but also there's an old Okinawan language, right? But nobody speaks anymore. They speak Japanese.
And the same thing, the way, from what I understand, the way the Japanese write is an old version of what would be the Chinese.
Somewhat, yes.
See,
Yes.
again, guys.
Like the original characters for karate, not today, karate means empty hand, but the original characters was Chinese hand. Funakoshi Sensei changed it to empty hand.
But he was also influenced by a guy named Jigoro Kano, who actually had him come over to
judo. Yeah, he's a founder of judo.
But remember, that's a Japanese guy who also promised him, from what I understand, that he would be treated like if he's a god or an emperor or whatever. And he became, what work did he do in the university that you know of? Well, for what we understand, he was a janitor.
I don't know which one.
A janitor. They made him, because guys, when they started teaching martial arts, they started teaching it at the universities.
Yeah.
Again, it doesn't make it good, bad. It's just so historical facts. But somewhere along the line, people have selective memory or incompetent people. Incompetent? I'm the guy. Incompetent and incompetent. Okay. Incompetent people or blind people are telling other people what to do. The blind's leading the blind. And my style originally was long fist kung fu, and I trained in a style that they used to call Korean karate. Why would they call it Korean karate? Because the Koreans were not allowed to do their styles. If you're gonna do any martial arts, you're gonna have to do our style, the same way when they take away your religion and your language and your gods and so on and so forth. That happened worldwide. So yes, we would consider bottom line, Korean karate today became Taekwondo, but it wasn't known as that before. It was known as Tang Soo Do, Mudo Kwan, etc. So when I trained and they said Korean karate, I was confused. But we also had heard that Kung Fu was Chinese boxing, right? Referencing fighting with what would be your region. Coming from North, where did you train at originally?
Well, I didn't train in karate in Newark.
Okay.
Never have Newark. When I had originally my first teacher, serious teacher of karate, was a gentleman by the name of Robert Eugene Everhart.
All right, so hold on a second. Hold on. So 1977, you went to Japan on your way over to Korea. But before that, were you exposed to martial arts beforehand?
Yes, Robert Everhart. Robert Eugene Everhart in here in DC area. What happened?
Whoa, wait a minute. You just blew me away. We just finished talking about Everhart. Everhart, rest in peace to him, literally was not just a promoter and what we consider, when I won his tournament, we won a replica of an Oscar, the Academy Award. But him and rest in peace, Little K, probably had two of the hardest hand grips in the history of hand grips.
He was also the first African American ever invited to perform in front of the Emperor of Japan.
Holy smokes!
The Japanese government gave him the name Teshin Kempo.
What style was this?
Japanese Kempo.
Wait a minute. Guys, listen closely. Japanese Kempo. Kempo is a reference to China. The Chinese were training in Kempo, Kempo. Po, which was voodoo or war arts or wusu to them. So that word has been dropped. Okinawan Kempo was a word that was used at one point, you know, or I should say, but wow. So who did he train with?
Hiroshi Hamada, who was also a student of Gogen Yamaguchi.
So we're looking at Japanese that trains with Okinawans, because Yamaguchi, I would assume, at some point trained with Shogun Miyagi over in one of the islands, or unless he was trained in Japan. I don't know. What's the history that you, if you know anything about that?
Gogen Yamaguchi was Japanese, right? He created, what was it? The Japanese Goju?
Yeah, well, technically it would have been Japanese Goju.
And one of his senior students was Hiroshi Hamada, who later came to America. He became professor of physical education at Old Dominion University in Norfolk, Virginia. And Robert Everhart was training under somebody else at the time, but then he left the guy and he started training with Hiroshi Hamada. Now, I started training with Everhart back in 1975, October 1975, because my mother had died that year. And I came to Washington, D.C., went to high school for a while. I was living with my sister and her 4 sons. But I got tired of her and I went back home to Newark. And I went back to New Jersey in 76. And then I happened to be walking up and down the street somewhere in East Orange in July of 1976. And I went by this dojo and saw these guys in fraction. It was the Turtle System under Dr. Bowles. And
Dr. Edward
Bowles and Frederick Godfrey, right, who's no longer with us too. And so I got involved in that. But the following year.
Whoa. I got to stop that, because now we're talking about probably oil and water in the case of, these are the guys who became the Teenage Ninja Turtles. And the reason I say teenagers is because a lot of those fighters were teenagers when they initially started in the Turtle system coming from New Jersey, who were also descendants themselves of a Panamanian from New York. And that gentleman was bringing in the Jitsu in addition to. And some incredible competitors, guys, not just in point karate and weapons and forms, but also in kickboxing, whether it was Smokey, my man Jesse Harris, or what you would consider the Snake, Reginald the Snake Good, you know. And I don't know what Trent Norman's nickname was, but my God, and Michael Powell and Andre Grant. Man, so these dudes were freaking superheroes in the flesh, all working out in one place. And Godfrey also was the instructor to Eugene Floyd. And all these guys had weapons. And if you look at the Ninja Turtles, the weapons that they had, these guys had them too. And they were known as, and they were all teenagers. Don't know if that's an actual fact, but this is what we believe because it was such a coincidence.
Well,
anyway.
And I got involved in that. And in the following year, upon graduating from high school, I went on active duty in the Army. Matter of fact, on my 17th birthday, well, actually the day before my 17th birthday, I had a recruiter post-date the paperwork. I went over to Brooklyn, New York, and had my uncle sign for it because the aunt that I was staying with in Newark, she didn't want me to go in the Army. I turned down 2 scholarships to go in the Army because I wanted to travel, see the world, do things. So
what would you been if you didn't go to the military? What was your interest in terms of school? Because you seem like a pretty well-read gentleman. I'm gone.
Law enforcement. I turned down a scholarship to Jersey City State College, and also one to NJIT, New Jersey Institute of Technology.
And what were they doing? I mean, back then, Institute of Technology. What was that? Rubber bands and what the heck?
Well, it was engineering school. As a matter of fact, one of the top engineering schools in the East Coast.
Engineering. Okay.
Right across, it was right across the street from my high school, right? And I turned it down. I want to sit in the classroom again for a while. I can always go back and do that. I wanted to travel so well.
So it's 1977. You're passing through Japan. You end up in Korea. Continue from there, and you had a little bit of martial arts training.
I came back to the States, and continued training for a while in the turtle system. Then in 78, I got out of the Army, went in the Navy,
Well,
and
wait a second. You just said that like no big thing.
it's not.
How the heck? Well, not to you. Most people would have never made it to the Army, let alone two different. What made you do that?
I didn't want to stay in Newark. I wasn't going to be a bum in the streets, and I wasn't going to be nickel and diming myself. No. So I went in the Navy, and my first duty station in the Navy was at a National Parachute Test Range in El Centro, California, which is the winter home of the U.S. Navy Flight Demonstration Team, the Blue Angels. So I trained for a while. I trained Wild Devils for a while, you know, and then 1980, I kept training on my own. 81, still training on my own. 82, I came back to New Jersey. I ended up on recruiting duty in New Jersey. Still training with the turtle system. Then I started training in Shotokan. Initially, I was training out of books and picking cotton, right? I did that from 82 to until I left. I left in 86.
Now, in between there, this is where I see you for the first time at some tournaments, because not only were you, not only were you at were you training, but you actually used to go to open tournaments, which of course there was a different competition back then. I don't know if you did any of the traditional AAU tournaments or anything like that during that time.
I did do some AAU tournaments too in New Jersey, you know. So I did that. Then in '85, I left. I got stationed down in Jacksonville, Florida. I started training under a gentleman by Michael Holland, traditional Shotokan down in of the Station Juku School in traditional Shotokan, then Jacksonville, Florida. I did that, and I left Jacksonville, Florida in '89. Well, got stationed in Charleston, South Carolina, continued training on my own, whatever. And then in 1989, 90, I left and got stationed in Brooklyn, New York.
I told you guys he used to come and leave. He used to pop up and then he was gone. What the heck, this guy? But every time he would be competing.
I trained in Brooklyn, New York, started competing and stuff again. And then I started training on a gentleman there in Brooklyn by the name of Thomas Casale, right? Who is now the head of JSK USA under Abe Sensei, who just passed a few months ago, 7 months ago. And
so guys, just so you know, JK is the Japanese Karate Association, and those were the students of Funakoshi Sensei that changed things and added and systemized things. They would be considered by many the authority, or at least one of them, of what would be today known as Shotokan, which, for whatever it's worth, it doesn't make any sense in English to me, but whatever.
It doesn't matter.
A kan is a place, a dojo, and Shoto was his nickname, his pen name, which is Pine Tree. Yeah, so they named the style in homage to the instructor.
Yes. So now from there, I trained with them for a few years. Then I got stationed elsewhere, and then I started training. I went to Europe. I was training at in the Waiter Sensei at the European headquarters for the Japan Karate Association, the JKA, and the Karate Union of Great Britain.
You said Enoeda.
Yeah. And I also trained in Bahrain, which is in right next to Saudi Arabia. I trained under a gentleman by the name of Philip Dutton of the British Martial Arts Association, and his instructor was a gentleman by the name of Frank Cope, who's now passed as well.
And these are all what you would consider descendants of the original founders. Oneida, I think, is one of the original students from
yes. Either they directly or indirectly trained by the Japanese, right? So senior British instructors and Japanese as well. I've had the opportunity to train under other notable Japanese masters like Osaka Sensei, Tomita Sensei, Inoue Sensei, Yoshinobu Ota Sensei.
And guys, if you notice, he says the word sensei after the fact because they do say it like that. Yes. It's not sensei, blah, blah, blah. So it's kind of like Yoda, talking backwards.
Also, who's the other gentleman too? Imamura Sensei as well. Morty Sensei from New York. He used to come over there. He used to come over there once a year. We had training camps twice a year at the Crystal Palace National Sports Center in Southeast London, in the Croydon section. And they used to come from Japan, and Morty Sensei would come from New York and train over there as well.
Guys, so you know the JK sent representatives throughout the world.
Yep.
New York, you had Mori Sensei, and then you had, I believe, Nishiyama.
Yep, Nishiyama. I've trained on him too, meeting Nishiyama.
Nishiyama was in Philadelphia? That was
no, Nishiyama was in Los Angeles.
Los Angeles.
You're talking about Okazaki Sensei. Yes?
That guy was probably the most impressive to me, only because when I see the Akihan, the book, he's doing full splits and doing all these kicks that you would think would be only from Korean. His guy can throw some kicks.
At the time I was training on him, I was also in the ISKF, that's JK/ISKF instructor training program there in Philadelphia at the Humboldt.
Again, guys, there you go. See, just because you get a black belt doesn't mean you can actually teach. The top competitors of all time from what would have been today known as the JK was a gentleman by the name of Frank Smith and Ray Dowkey.
Oh, yeah.
Now, the difference between Dowkey and Smith was that Dowkey can teach you and Smith couldn't because he didn't do the instructor's training program. So these guys were organized as professionals to know the difference between a practitioner and an educator.
Frank Smith was probably the most feared American competitor on the planet. This guy, and I tell you a story, I don't know if you've heard this before, but in a weight sensei was competing against Frank Smith, broke his jaw on purpose. It was no accident. He broke Frank Smith's jaw. And I guess because story legend has it that Frank Smith was mopping the floor with him, right? So he broke Frank Smith's jaw, and after that, you never heard any more from Frank Smith. I don't even know if he's still living now.
Yeah, and it was interesting because the guy that they really pushed more towards was Ray Dowkey, and it was because Dowkey was, guys, the Japanese would do anything to save face.
Yes.
Let's talk about that for a second. Save face.
Yes, I guess you can say it's a principle of theirs. They don't like embarrassment. They don't like being
made a fool of. Guys, listen.
It's shame.
In Okinawa, when they bow, we've heard that they don't say anything. They just bow. In Japan, how do they do it in Japan? Because I've heard different versions of it. I know one thing. They don't say us. They go high most of the time.
That's an American thing.
Let's talk about that. Yeah.
You walk in somebody's dojo, hear people speak, you go oof, right? So you spend half your day instead of learning something, you spend half your day bowing, right? No, totally not necessary. In Japan, they're bowed. They say anything like, for example, if you're in class and you're training and you bow to your partner, you say "Onegashimasu," which means please teach me, please help me, right? None of this other Western ass fancy stuff. Oof, oof, 15 times, oof. Not necessary. You walk in the dojo, you bow, and that's it. You say nothing.
When you bow, okay. So now you're giving a little more detail. Again, guys, this is from a person who's been there. Not read about it, not heard from someone who might have been there. He's been there himself multiple times, based on military. Take advantage of that, guys. The way you went from Army to Navy didn't seem like much, but to me, it was like, I didn't even know you can do that. And you went through that transition. I think you're one of those guys that knows how to read, and then you figure out what can be done, make things happen. Are you one of those dudes that can see the benefits of what would be allotted to us, and then take full advantage of that, even way back when as a young man?
Yeah. You know, I know I didn't want to end up like some of the people that I graduated from high school with, or some of the people in my neighborhood. I didn't want to be a part of that. And that was for me.
What was the major difference between Army and Navy, and why not Marines from Army? I mean, what made you do that choice?
Well, I would have went in the Marine Corps, but they told me my qualification score was too high.
Wow, overqualified. We need some.
No, I'm just joking with that. The
Oh,
Marines are
okay.
good guys too. We just it's a
Yeah, you're
feeling.
talking about that's an inside joke with the leatherheads, right?
It's that rivalry between the Navy and Army. I mean, Navy and the Marine Corps. But I'm gonna tell you something else that most people, 99.9% of people in America, do not know until you remind them of this. If you look at all their decals, all their insignia, the Marine Corps logo, what does it say at the top? It says United States Marine Corps, Department of the Navy. People don't realize this, but the Marine Corps is the combat arm of the Navy. They come under the Department of the Navy. There's no separate Department of the Marine Corps. The Commandant of the Marine Corps takes his orders from the Chief of Naval Operations and the Secretary of the Navy. All of their insignia, all of their regalia, all of their decals, and it says United States Marine Corps, Department of the Navy. They work for the Navy. That's their boss.
Well, again, guys, see, he went off on a tangent because, of course, when you're a little slightly eccentric and been there, done that in a variety of ways, then you can just get more matter of fact. So that's what I love about whatever his name is, you know, because throughout the years we've had conversations and they've always been really stimulating. So on a 180-degree opposite angle, only because we wasn't intending to do this, but we have about less than 5 minutes here. Tell me what's going on when it comes to what would be your nutrition and recently what has happened to you. Now, you shared some information a while ago, but I want it to be officially documented right now as we speak. Talk to me.
I have been using these supplements by a company called Isogenics. And I'm using the shakes and another supplement called Isogenics Telomere Support System, Isogenesis Telomere Support System. And this combined with the shakes where you're getting proper nutrition and you get the proper supplementation with the telomere support system, I have experienced what I think is a phenomenal resurgence of energy, vitality. I wake up in the morning, I don't have the mental fog, whereas before I was suffering of diabetic ketoacidosis, diabetic neuropathy in both my lower extremities, particularly in my feet, and it used to pain me to walk. I used to walk with a limp. Right? Now I don't have that problem anymore. I jump out of bed like I'm 20 years old in the morning. I don't have that brain fog anymore. Now everything seems to be clearer, right? Consistency is the key, right? The shakes are delicious, easy to make. There's a lot of science behind it, but it's not difficult to make at all. The concept of using it is not difficult to grasp. It's delicious, it tastes good. If you want to put fruits or vegetables or whatever in it, you can do that too, right? Just keep in mind that if you are using the shakes, the more you put into it, the more calories you're going to get along with that too. That in and of itself is not bad. It's the quality of the calories that you receive. Well, all in all, I've experienced phenomenal health gains. Right?
Let's talk about the situation where your inability to do the walks that you wanted to and where you're at now.
Now, I'm walking up to 15 miles, right? And I got to tell you, it's good. Whereas before, I could barely walk 2 blocks.
Wow.
Without limping, and it's really bad.
How long did you have to put yourself through what would be the whole therapy or the process how long have you been doing this before you saw a turnaround?
I've been taking now about 2 months. About 2 months.
And when did you discover that you was feeling different?
Somewhere between the first 24 and the first 36 hours, if that long.
Wow.
Right? And to show you what I'm talking about here is, this is just for the past week, where before I could never do this, right? This is how far I've walked. If you all can see that.
Whoa, yeah.
In the past week from July 12th to July 18th, I walked 102,274 steps. Well, before I couldn't do that, right? So when I say the gains are there, the handwriting is on the wall, the proof is in the pudding, I mean that. You know, documentation beats conversation. I can get up here and talk to you till you blue in the face and tell you I did this, I did that, but this doesn't lie, right?
Now, when we had a conversation, I asked you to just do me a favor. After you looked at what would be information, I said, try it. If you don't like it, get your money back. And if you do, then we can have a conversation. Is that
Yes.
what happened?
Exactly. Exactly. I was cautious at first because I actually, 99.9% of the supplementation out there is nonsense. It's total garbage, right? They're not backed by solid science. They're backed by junk science, which is really no science at all. This company, Isogenics, has taken supplementation to another level. It definitely raised the bar for me personally. So I speak from personal experience. This is not a fly-by-night company.
18
no
years,
false advertisement.
Wait, 1 second, because you just said something there that's the truth, right? It's been around 18 years, but something just hit me. They just added 12 countries, which includes Japan.
Yes.
In addition to that, they also just did something called Vitamers, which is really the complete of all the nutrients, as opposed to vitamins, which is just a little segment of it. In other words, they just stepped up. What we had that was great, we just stepped it up to make it even better. What do you think about that?
I think it's an awesome acquisition. And the time has come. The time is right. The time has come.
Guys, I think someone may be visiting Japan again.
Oh, I'm definitely going back. I'm definitely going back. Now that I know I can fly out.
He read the fine print. He read the fine print.
I can fly out and only pay $5 for a box lunch. Yeah. So when this pandemic is over, Tokyo, here I come.
So would you actually share any of the so-called miraculous changes with some of those people that can try it there too?
First chance I get. First chance I get.
Listen, guys, again, this was not structured to what it became. So this is just two friends having a conversation. As you can see, it was casual enough, but the information, I believe, was very good, phenomenal. And I learn every time I have a conversation with you, and I appreciate that. Because for what it was worth, you're welcome. For what it was worth, guys, people aren't that intelligent in some areas. And to me, I like to speak to people who know more than I do about subject matters, because I want to have what the Japanese consider the kaizen, my constant and never-ending improvement. And I think we have a pretty, what do you think about the group that we have? Our inner circle with the gatekeepers.
Gatekeepers. I think the idea behind it is noble. I think it is inspirational, practical even. And I think in the future, in the coming months and years, it'll be a force to be reckoned with in the areas of personal nutrition, fitness, and just letting everybody else know what's going on too. We're not just keeping it to ourselves. We're not just promoting a product, we're promoting a brand. So there's a difference, right? Anybody can promote a product. You can say, hey, look at this. Look what I've got. This works. Buy some. That's promoting a product. Promote a brand. And that's what we're doing here. And that brand is not just the company name, but it's what the company stands for, what the product stands for, what it means to a lot of people, not just myself, not just for you, but for thousands of other people as well.
And last question, and I know you got to run, and I apologize for that because I'm really enjoying this. Of course, we wasn't supposed to talk about some of the other things, but hey, I had him here, might as well ask him, because this guy's more than well read. He's been there, done that, and that's a big difference, guys. So I believe that we just begun. We haven't even started the tip of the iceberg. Knowing that people worldwide are in fear, rightly so, when it comes to their immune system being compromised with the possibility of this, what kind of confidence do you have that you can help them with what we have, and why?
First of all, it's like personal example, leading by personal example. I cannot tell you what's good for your health if I don't know what's good for mine. Right? So if you're gonna talk that talk, you better be walking that walk. That's why I use the products religiously, right? So that I can continue to not only reap the benefits for myself, but be able to convey that to other people as well, right? Otherwise, you're faking a fraud. You know,
Hey, so listen, I had Dr. Jonathan on the other day, and I asked him a question. I'm gonna ask you the same question. Will you do me a big favor
what's that?
stop taking the product for a month?
No,
What do you mean?
never gonna happen.
But I'm your boy.
No, never gonna happen. That's never gonna happen.
Isn't that something, man? I feel the same exact way, man. We're without this being anything but the honest truth, guys. I almost get teary-eyed when I think about how many of my friends didn't get a chance to take care of themselves and they're gone, man. I don't want that to happen, guys. And that's why I feel so blessed that Dr. Jonathan exposed me to something that's really, I mean, it's not words, it's really life-changing. I didn't know how I was going to take care of myself. I don't have the luxury or what would be any finances coming from anywhere, man. And to know that I did the right thing, that my mother says to me, do you feel like you're saving people's lives? I said, yeah, Mom, that's what I want to do. So I appreciate you. I want to thank you for believing and trusting in me enough to at least try it.
Yes. Haven't gone wrong since.
Hey guys, on that note, I want to say thank you very much, sir. When I say AB, you don't mind, you say see ya. AB,
see you.
We out of here. Thank you very much.
Walk about 15 miles now.
God bless. Peace.
All right, brother.
Have fun.
Later. All right, man. Thanks.
Bye-bye.